Hi everyone, welcome to our Golu 2023. This is the aerial display that you see. And what is this year's theme? We've themed it on the life's lessons taught by traditional Indian games. What you see below out here is a display of dolls, but also a representation of snake and ladders. The game that we've all played as a child, which plays a very, very important role in the Hindu belief system, teaching us the virtues and values of life with every number on the board having a very significant meaning, full of virtues and vices, teaching the interconnectedness between the world and human beings. So with that representation, let's now go down to see what we've represented this year, how and why. As we all know, Golu is the way we celebrate Dussehra in Tamil Nadu with a display of dolls on steps, with every doll being worshipped, all the way from gods to human beings, to kings, to animals, to plants. Everything is basically worshipped. So we have that representation of the mini Golu as always out here as a series of steps. But if you look at the overall theme, as I said, it has been themed on what are the lessons that traditional Indian games have really taught us. So this is the full view of the display. Again, you saw the aerial display of the game of snakes and ladders. And like every year, there is always a cue in terms of how did this idea come in. A dear friend in the community had given me this book last year, end of Golu of last year, called Just Play, written by her friend Vinita. So I told her then that this is going to be my theme this year. What are the life's lessons from traditional Indian games? And here that representation is what you see out here. I also stumbled on a couple of these other books, the games that India plays. And I also happened to see this last year. I think it was just coincidence to see a lot of these games coming back into mainstream, into limelight. Where even in the community that I live in, a lot of traditional games have been picked up for play again, which was wonderful to see. So as we start, let's understand the basic difference. Sport, game and play. All of these are very commonly interchangeably used words. But there is a significant difference and a meaning in all of them. It's literally like a funnel where sport is at the core. Sport is something which is physical in nature, which is competitive. At the top of it sits games, where games could be physical or mental in nature. They may or may not be competitive. So every sport is a game. And further up in the funnel, the top of the funnel, is your play. A play basically is a loose framework. It could be for joy, it could be for entertainment. It could be a game, but it could even be something as simple as you play a prank, you play a joke, whatever it is. But every game indeed is a play. So this is the base framework that we need to remember: a sport, a game, and a play. So with that, a few things again to note. As far as a game is concerned, it really thrives on the basic concept of interconnectedness, the social connectedness in human beings. Humans are all social animals which need that interconnectedness. And game basically brings in a lot of that joy, a lot of that de-stress for that human being coming together. Where traditionally India has played a lot of very significant games in very easy forms. The good thing is in India, the games that we've played have brought in a lot of physical strength, mental strength, has really strengthened the mathematical skills of the individual, the brain development, again the physical development, has required very, very minimal infrastructure. It has literally been gender agnostic, age agnostic, religion agnostic, social stature agnostic, really bringing people together. And as I said, infrastructure has been very low. You can literally just pick a ball, it's not even a bat, a stick, go out in the street and start playing. This has really been, the norm, the core of how we all grew up. So with all of this, let's now start looking at the display where I've divided it into a few sections. And again, why did all of this start? If you look at this out here, we're all so glued into the digital era, digital world, the world of video games. But if you just take a step past, rewind, and look at the childhood that we've all had, we've all enjoyed all of these games. And I have this lady proudly carrying the Indian flag, which we've seen in all of the games, the Commonwealth Games, the Asian Games, where every country is so proud of the games that it represents, brings to the table. And this is all India's pride that we see out here in terms of what's being represented. The 5 sections that I have, the centermost that you see is what are the games that we've associated with gods playing. Because games also represent adventure, valor, strength. Besides, of course, the joy and entertainment that it brings in, that spirit of competitiveness is shown in terms of the adventure that the game entails. So all of that has been represented behind the scene, as in at the end of the Golu. The second section talks about, traditionally, what are the games that India has played, has contributed to the world, which could be both board games as well as street games. What are the games that India acquired from rest of the world? And that way we've been very, very embracing in terms of taking in from other cultures as well. So what is it that we've taken in terms of acquired games? The section here talks about the games that we've played during festivals, during fairs, weddings and such. Now game again, like in case of any other aspects such as culture, food, language, is very centric to the topography of a certain region. That's how it's been in India. Depending on the topography, depending on the culture there, depending on the climatic conditions, the games have really varied. So we've accounted for all of this as well in the display as much as possible. And in the front out here, we have, how games have really been part of our daily lives. You go to school, you come back, enjoy your game. What do you eat? What else do you do? Where it was really interlaced with the daily living of we all as part of our childhood. That is the 5th section that I have out here. So as I start in the center in terms of what are the games that gods have played. So again, as I said, since adventure played a very, very important role in showcasing your competitiveness in the game, in the sport, along with the Marapachi, which is very traditional and typical in every Golu, we have the Durga Devi here with all her arms and ammunitions. Again, that has been a showcase of strength, of valor. Most of these translating into games, it could have even been the martial arts in some sense. But these have all represented themselves in some form of sport, showing that strength. And since women played a very, very important role in all of these traditional games, we have represented the women from across different regions of India. And we've kept Ayyappan there, showcasing with all his bows and arrows sitting on the tiger, again showcasing archery as an adventure sport. On either side out here, we've kept a lot of games that Lord Krishna has played. We all know how Krishna has been associated as a very, very playful god, but at the same time has truly helped us understand the meaning of life and righteous living. So to that extent, some of the games that Lord Krishna has played have been kept, whether it is playing Holi or drinking water from a pond very playfully, sitting on top of his friend. In Tamil we call this the uppu mootte. It's almost like carrying a salt bag on your back. The Pacha Kudra, the game where it is a hurdle cross, Krishna jumping across his friend. A sliding board game that Krishna has been playing. Or just sitting on a tree top, on a branch of a tree, trying to jump into the river or pond in front of him. And literally most of us as kids, that's how we've learned to swim. We've not necessarily gone in for competitive swimming, but that's the playful act through which we've really overcome the fear of water and jumped in and learnt and moved on. So that has been kept out there. But it is again not just Krishna, Lord Shiva, Lord Ganesha. There are some games, some pranks associated with a bunch of other gods as well. So we have something called Pittika Mann Sumandadu, where Lord Shiva comes in to help an old lady in a village during floods, where every home had the responsibility to carry mud and stop the water from coming in. Shiva did not do his job, was lazing under a tree, and the king came in to leash him, where every leash he gave on Lord Shiva came back on the king. So that was a prank that he played. We have Lord Ganesha here on the sliding board with his, with again his Vaganam, the mice. I will go on the other side before we start explaining the central piece out here. We all know the story of Mankani, where Lord Shiva and Parvati start a game with their children, Subramanya and Ganesha, saying whoever goes around the world first gets the fruit of this mango that I have. Lord Muruga again immediately jumps in, takes it competitively, gets on his peacock, starts going around the world, whereas Ganesha comes around his parents saying, this is my world, you guys are my world, and I win the fruit. So that's a prank that he played, is what one may call, but again it involves the smartness of Ganesha right out there in winning that particular game. So games have been associated with gods in all of these shapes and forms. Out here, if you see, we've kept Malyud, wrestling in the modern day form, Krishna and Balrama wrestling. Back in the days, wrestlers actually practiced serious vegetarianism, is what history says. And sports have been so ingrained that it even dates back to over 8,000 years, when monolithic beliefs were still in prevalence. There are sport historians, similar to archaeology, who really try and understand, which era, what generation, what age, what sport was played, what game was played. And this is the history that we know about wrestling at this point in time. There are additional games out here with Krishna enjoying a play of dressing up. We've all played this, right? We've all, as kids, played dress up, mom-daughter, a play of doctor. So here is Krishna playing with Radha and his other friends, dressing up. Krishna drinking straight from the cow, pushing aside the calves, depriving them of their milk. Again, it's an act of play. Krishna pulling the cow's tail. Krishna playing blindfolded, blind buff is again a game that we've all played. Krishna again breaking the parts of Radha's and taking butter in a playful act. On a serious note, again we have Rama, the Ramar Pattabhishegam out here, where archery was a very, very important sport. And we all know how Rama won Sita's hand during the Swayamvar by breaking the bow, which was very difficult for anyone else to break. We also have archery being taught here in Mahabharata. Arjuna learning to hit the bird's eye under Dronacharya's guidance. So that is also listed out here, kept out here. So all of these, again, sports and games have been such an integral part in the Hinduism space, in the cultural space, and along with that, thereby in the Indian setup, dating back several centuries. Now, the other important thing is, again, these have all been such a significant piece in our temples. So when you go to a temple, it is not just for worship, but that has also been a place where you get together to play. Most temples, if you see, the temple floors have these board games that have been imprinted, that have been carved, that have been chiseled, that we are able to still find them to this day. Behind out here, again, given the show of strength, we even have, there is a question if mountaineering, if hiking is a sport. Now that particular piece does not fit into the definition of a sport, given that, again, it's not very rule driven, it is not competitive necessarily. So there is always a gray area in certain activities as to whether they are a sport game or merely an activity. Now coming back to temples, I spoke about this overall theme being life's lessons from traditional Indian games. So what are those core lessons and what are some of the games that map to those core lessons? As listed out here, self-awareness, strategy, synergy, survival, and ultimately awareness of the world and you. These are some of the core lessons that traditional Indian games have taught us. So again, if you see out here, the game of Pachishi, the game of Ludo, is one of the significant games as far as the Indian mythology goes and dating back to Mahabharata. This was actually the game of ancient India, which actually has brought down kingdoms as we know. So we see out here the Pandavas playing against Shakuni, pledging all of their wealth, their crowns, their jewelry, and how Shakuni, again, this is a game which is really set to be a game of choice and chance. How Shakuni basically won over the Pandavas, and which really led to the destruction of the Pandavas, the bring down of the Pandavas. So that has been represented out there as a very, very important game in our history, in our belief in the Hindu system. We also have Krishna and Rukmani playing Dayam, again Ludo, we call it the Dayakatte in Tamil. Dayam basically meaning dice. So dice is one significant instrument in all of these board games that in India has traditionally played. So coming back to these traditional games and the lessons that they have taught us, we have right from games that have been single player games, which you play as a single player, continue to make mistakes, learn, unlearn, and so on and so forth. So the game of Panch Kone, which basically is the 5-pointed star, is of significance not just in Hinduism, but also in Christianity and Islam. If you look at strategy, games like Ashtachima, Sola Sidi, Kattam Vilayattu, they've all taught us important lessons in strategy around how concrete actions lead to advancement, how strategic thinking helps us meet goals, and how strategies are important in being proactive and reactive. We then have the space of survival. Games such as again Pachishi, Ludo, which was actually patented by the British in the 19th century. Games such as Dadi, which basically help you strategize to success, bring in that synergy to success. Pallanguri, which basically shows the effect of cumulative actions, how those together help you get into success. Games for survival, such as we have the top out here, and then we have the Golu as well. These are all games that have taught us survival skills, along with Gilli. Gilli as a game literally just has a stick that you hit hard, which has taught you how to set goals in life. So all of these have been listed, along with of course snakes and ladders, another representation out here, which shows you in the world and how you have to learn from vices and virtues and follow the path of virtues. Continuing here, we've also kept yoga, because this is also yet another question all the time. Is yoga a sport, a yoga a game? Yoga really is a unison of the body and the mind. It is neither a game nor a sport. But the unique thing is that yoga is required for every player, for every sports person, to have that physical and mental balance and composure. An extension out here, all of the games that originated in India, especially the board games, including carom board, chess, pallanguri, ludo, which is the dayakatte, representing again the dice and the play sticks, have all been kept here. But games such as polo also actually originated in India. It started in the Manipur area. We've kept boxing as Mushti Yudh was a very important game back in the days. One would think this came in from Egypt. Egypt and other medieval areas again may have had boxing also in their origins, in their history, but it also has an origin associated with India. We have Kho and Kabaddi, which are very, very important physical sports which originated in India and was given to the rest of the world. In fact, initially it is said to have played on elephants and horses, especially Kho. Herein we have a representation of acquired games. What are games that India acquired? India that way has been very, very embracing. What has it acquired from the world around? Games such as tennis, football, cricket, the fanatics we are when it comes to cricket. It is an acquired game which requires heavy infrastructure. The one big difference between Indian games, Indian sports, and what we've acquired, especially like a cricket, is that in the Indian games, there are minimal players, but all of them are actively engaged all the time. Throughout the play, there is activity required from the set of players, which is a big difference compared to a game like cricket. Moving on out here, we have a representation of what are the games that we've played during festivals, fairs, and weddings. As I mentioned again, it's been very regional in nature. And that way, if you see out here, there is a representation of Sankranti, Pongal, which is celebrated in varied parts of the country in different ways. In Tamil Nadu and other parts of South India, Jallikattu, which is basically bringing the raging bull under control, is a very, very important adventure sport. So you see this being played during Sankranti. You see the person of strength and valor again trying to bring that bull under control. And there is his winning cup waiting there for him. And you have the spectators as well. During Sankranti, in the Gujarat area, for instance, in the west, kite flying is a very, very important sport. It's a very interesting game that is played, so that is also displayed. During Janmashtami, Dahi Handa or Uri Adikardu is a very important sport that is played, which is in fact recognized now as a national sport in states such as Maharashtra. During Onam, Vallam Katti or the boat race is a very important sport. During Diwali, poker, game of cards is very, very important, especially in North India. And it was interesting for me to note that the play of cards actually originated in India. It used to be played by the kings in their kingdoms, especially in the 14th and 15th century, and that tradition continues. So we have the pack of cards, and we have, in fact, especially it is played with money. During weddings as well, a lot of games are played, especially again for the bride and the groom, to get to know each other and start life in a very joyous manner. So we have a couple out here. We have the Sindoor Khela, which is again a game played during Dashera in the Bengal area, so that is there. And it was interesting for me to note that in Japan as well, we saw this during our trip this summer. Japan has a doll festival like our Golu, played in March, primarily for the longevity of the girl child. So this is a little wedding scene from Japan. And during fairs and festivities as well in India, a lot of games are played. So this is the Pushkar fair. You see a lot of Rajasthani women all dressed up and coming to the Pushkar fair. And if you see out here in the Pushkar fair, elephant races, camel races, cock fights like the Jallikattu, the bull race. Here is the cock fight. All of these are very, very common, is what we've seen over the years. Now, with all of these representations coming to the front, as I said again, games have been such an integral part interlaced in our daily living that, as a child, we would go to school, come back, and when we are back home, have a little snack and start our play, or post the play, have fun, just eating local roadside food, right from playing with the balloons from the balloon vendor, or having cotton candy, having chai at a tea store, tender coconut at a local, tender coconut wala, enjoying at a park after a little bit of a game. Here is an Amul baby from back in the days, enjoying her street side food, butter, with her parathas, a pani puri stall, a lady making her little muffins on the roadside. So all of these have been those little elements of joy so integral in our growing years, which basically shows that food is such an important element as well. The nutrition is so important in wholesome living, thereby helping us play very well as well. So I want to wrap this year's Golu with that note, again represented by the game of snakes and ladders, and with this man and woman out here, that end of the day, life is really a game. We cannot take it competitively with others, but we've got to play it in our own stride. And these are some very, very important lessons that the traditional Indian games have taught us. Hopefully this year's Golu of ours was a good rewind, taking you into a throwback in your childhood years for all the games that we've enjoyed, and the history and the meaning and the most important life's lessons that they have shown us, continue to show us. I think we have a very important responsibility in passing this message to our kids, the future generations, so that these are not lost in time, lost in memories just with our lives, but it comes a full circle where it is carried forward into the future generations as well. Thank you so much for joining us in this virtual tour of Golu themed on life's lessons from traditional Indian games. Wish you all a very, very happy festive season ahead, and a very happy time, very joyous time, very prosperous time to you and your families. Thank you, and signing off from the Bharatans household.